Welcome back to the channel, guys. Now recently I fished an autumn festival here at Weston Pools. It was sponsored by Guru and it was over Canal, Belvedere and Stretton. Now I was lucky enough to win both matches on both days. Now one simple tactic which I used, which got me over the line and caught me a lot of fish for the past 2 days, was fishing maggots on the bottom. But it wasn't just that simple. There's these 2 rigs which I feel like used correctly in certain situations help me catch a few more fish. And what I'm going to do is I'm here, we're on the Belvedere today, you can see there's a famous stone, and what we're going to do, I'm going to go back on peg 3 and I'm going to run you through my thoughts and processes and catch a few fish on camera for you, fishing with these rigs with maggots, and I'll show you how I went about winning 2 matches here at Weston Pools on this deadly tactic. And it's going to be one you can take apart at fisheries up and down the country. So let's get on the box and get stuck into it. Right, so we're on the box now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the 2 rigs which I used, talk about why I've used 2 different style rigs over the 2 days and the certain situations we're faced with. So I've come back onto peg 3 Belv, which on the first day I won the match here with £92, I think it was. Now, this is probably the narrowest part of the lake. So what I mean by that is there's like a bigger bowl bit at the bottom there, then it channels up here and goes a little bit wider, then funnels down towards peg 12. So distance wise for this sort of fishing, the 2 days I fished 2 different distances, so I want to talk about that first. Now with this being narrow, I had someone on peg 25, Ian Hall was on peg 25, and then no one really in this bouldy bit here to my right. There was peg 5 in and peg 22, so a little bit of room to my right, as where peg 1 and 25 were that sort of way. So what I was thinking is, I know from past experience it's quite deep close in here, so what I mean by that is there's hardly any shelf, so like it's probably like nearly 4 foot in the edge, then it drops off probably on a top kit straight away, and it's like basically like a little swimming pool basically. So what my plan of attack was, I'll just run through why I fished where I have on this peg, and then when I was on 8 Stretton I fished a little bit different, is because I got lily pads about 10 metres out. So what I'm thinking is any fish that are going to swim from this space here, they're going to come down the middle, say like half depth. The last thing I want to do is go too far and draw them fish off that shallow line. So I want 2 different lines and I want to split my fish up. I don't want to go too close, but it allows me to fish a little bit closer because it's a little bit narrower and we've got the depth there. Obviously if it's a little bit shallower I'd have to go a little bit further. So all I've done is just fished a short F1 kit, a short number 3 in one section. So it's nice and deep there. It's probably, try me ring. It's probably 5.5 foot, which is a nice little depth to catch in. But what you got to be careful of this time of year especially, and before it goes proper cool, is the fish can come off the bottom the further you go out. So what I mean by that is the further you go out on your peg, the fish can come off the bottom, and that can cause you missed bites, foul up fish, and that can be a real issue. So if you've got a little bit of depth close in, try not to go too far at this time of year. The fish are still munching around, you're still catching late on. So that's what I thought, my thought process of why I fished so close. Now, rig wise, I'm going to be targeting F1s, skimmers, eyed, very odd carp. I don't expect to get many in if I do hook them because they're big in this lake, and you'll see when I talk about my rigs, I've actually refined them down. So you got to get a little bit lucky to try and get a carp in. But F1s from anything from 4 ounce up to 4 or 5 pound. Skimmers, they can be really important. They can be anything from 5 ounce to up to 2 pound, and then eyed, they can be anything from 3 or 4 ounce up to 2 pound again. So they're the 3 main target fish I'm looking for. Now rig wise replicates this, and when I talk about rigs you'll see why I've got different rigs and do. All I'm going to do is just loose feed it just so we can prime it up, because that's what initially you're going to have to do when you're priming your lines up. Now one thing about that festival, switching lines is really important. So having 2 lines where I could loose feed a bit of bait, draw some fish in was really important as well. So all I like to use in this line is just some nice big maggots. They're from D-side, which is a Lane's bait, and I've just got a mixture of red and whites. I just like this time of year. Just feel like personal preference. If you just fish one colour, I feel like sometimes you're not going to trick any fish, as where if you've got two different colours, sometimes you can put a red and a white on, sometimes you put double white, sometimes put single red, single white. You can change it up and play around, and I know it sounds simple as two different colours sometimes. The other week when I was on canal, single white maggot was best, whereas this festival, a red and a white maggot was best on the hook. I don't know why, but that's what the fish seem to pick out a little bit quicker. You can get your bites a little bit quicker on that. So feeding wise, I just like to loose feed 10 to 15 maggots, just twice, nice little area. Try and keep as tight as you can, because you don't want to spread your bait too much, because obviously it makes them a little bit harder to catch. So I'm waffling on about that, but I'm going to get stuck onto my rigs now. Now the first one is going to, obviously fishing in 5.5 foot, the idea of maggots is they fall through the water quite slow, so I want to replicate my rig for this. So both my kits have got a 10's jaw, a holler. Like I said before, the fish that I'm fishing for are anything from say 4 ounce up to 4 or 5 pounds. So this just allows me to cope with all that, cushions it nice and soft. If I get an F1, it's going to come out a little bit more. If I get an hide and a skimmer, I'm going to make sure I get them fish in. So all for a short kit. Now mainline, I've actually stepped it down now. That's 015 mainline, just power line. Just feel like I'm not going to be putting 015 hook lengths on now. Maybe the max I'll go is 013, but that's very rare unless you're dobbing a few fish. So that's going to be my max. So I'm going to be fishing like 010s, 011s, maybe 09s in the winter. So that's my main line. Now I have quite a short lash or in between the float and the pole tip on this, because I want to keep everything nice and tight. I'm fishing short, I'm fishing delicate. The last thing I want to do is have a long piece of line between my pole tip and my float, and my rig to start drifting off me, not be over my feed, foul looking odd fish, and just be not be nice and tight and accurate. I feel like when the fish come short anyway, it's not like when you're fishing into the lake. They're coming there to feed, so you can get away with a nice short line between your pole tip and your float. I think that's about 5 inches, and I've just got 2 number 9 back shot there just to keep everything tight, everything in position, so when I hold my rig still, I know everything's in position and locked in. Now the first rig, for 5.5 foot, I've just got a 4x12 F1 maggot. Now this it's got all the fundamentals which I want from a maggot fishing. Nice little bristle, it's not too thick and it's not too thin, so I can read it in any little dinks I can see. If it's too thin, you can strike it line by its indications. If it's too thick, you can not get them extra fish like them hide and skimmers. Yes, I'd probably like to use, in the summer months, an XS F1 because it's got a slightly thicker tip, but there's more fish in your peg. The bigger, the more aggressive, as where this time of year, the water's going clearer. You just got to refine things a little bit. Now, one thing I think is really important is to have the right weight of your float. So I've got a 4x12 of this one, 5.5 foot. Now the shotting pattern, because it's a nice light float and I'm fishing a 4x12, it's probably the lightest float I'm going to be able to get away with to fish efficiently in that depth. It's just a simple strung bulk shotting pattern. So probably spaced about 2.5 inches apart, all in the bottom third of my rig. So nice strung out shotting pattern there. And then on this one, I've just got a 4-inch hook length of 010 to an XSS, I can't actually say that, I struggle with it a minute, XFS, size 16, so a nice light hook. 010, it's 4 inches, so I've got my shot quite close to my hook. This is because, like, I've got some skimmers, some hide, they can be quite finicky feeders, so I just want to get that shot close to the hook as I can. Now the shot on this rig, I've just got number 10s, as where I feel like if you have number 11s, it'd be just slightly too many and it would cause a too big a gap in between your shot, and if you have number 9s, it's going to sink a little bit fast. So just number 10s on your rig. Obviously size 16 XFS AccuPower 010, nice and light, and you're going to get all them skimmers, hide, F1s in on that rig. That's probably my best rig I've probably used up here at Weston. But on day 2, when I went over to Stretton, I feel like I learned a little bit about rigs. Now this rig is perfect for trying to catch through the water, trying to slow your bait down. You're trying to attract the fish onto your hook bait. So what I mean by that is when you slow your bait down, you're going to attract fish. You're going to cause that bait to fall for the water nice and slow. When the water goes clear, it just gives the fish more time to see your hook bait, and it just gives you a better chance of hooking one. But there is a scenario where you do get a lot of fish in your peg at certain times. Now we're in the afternoon now, so it's probably perfect time for it to catch some F1s. But say early in your session, you might have to pick up your lighter rig to try and catch them. But when I feel there's F1s in your peg, which I had on H Stretton, on my short line, I fished it a little bit further because I felt that I needed to, because I didn't feel like there was enough silvers and skimmers and I'd feeding on that lake to try and get away with fishing closer. Now this is where you've got to use a bit of watercraft. Sometimes it's like me coming on here and saying, oh, you just got to fish top kitten 2 or top kitten 1, that's it. You've got to look at your peg, think, right, where am I going to get the most fish in my peg and be able to catch him nice and easy. Now I feel like if I went further on this peg, I've got more chance of the fish rising off the bottom and having problems with foul hookers and missed bites. As where when I was on H Stretton, the lake, I wouldn't say wasn't fishing very good because it fished well both days. There was a lot of bites to be had, but there wasn't the certain type of fish to feeding. So the eyed and skimmers, there wasn't loads of them feeding. So all my fish that we're going to catch were going to be sort of F1s, little stocky F1s. And I know if I go too far or too close, they can be a little bit of a nightmare. So that's where your watercraft's got to come in, where you're picking the right place. But the most deadly rig for that was fishing a little bit heavier. So what I mean by this is a 4x14. Now, this just gives me a little bit more control with my rig and be able to put my rig in a different way, have a different shotting pattern, be nice and patient. When there's some F1s in your peg, it's not frantic fishing. You've got to make sure they try and pick up your hook bait and just be nice and efficient and nice and accurate. So elastic's the same again, same sort of line limit, 5 inches between your pole tip and your float, little back shot in the middle. Just a 4x14's F1 maggot this time. Like I said, it's got a nice bristle, thin body, carbon stem, does everything you want to do. 015 mainline. Now on this one I've just got a bulk and 2 droppers. Now the reason for this is because I want to get my bait down to the bottom. It's okay with a light rig, you can mess around with it falling through the water, but when there's a few fish there feeding on the bottom, that's where you want to be. So the last thing you want to do is, say you miss a bite and you've got to relay your rig in or wait for your rig to catch up, or if you have them spells where like last 40 minutes you can catch really quick short. Now I had a little spell, probably 2 hours to go, where I dropped in short, probably caught 5 or 6 fish really quickly. Now with this sort of like shotting pattern, you're still getting the finesse of falling down, but your bait's getting down to the bottom nice and quick and nice and efficiently. So just a little block of shot there, number 8s, 5 number 8s. I've just got 2 trimmers above it just to dot it down, and then 2 number 10s. They're spaced 6 inches apart, so one on top of my 6-inch hook length, 6 inches again, and then 6 inches again to that bulk. So it's obviously, you got 18, 12, 6. That's how you, if you're struggling to do it, nice and simple. And then this one's a little bit beefed up because, like I said before, when the fish are in the peg and feel like the fish are eating, you don't really need light hooks and light lines. Now, I'm not going to be whacking on a 14, putting 2 maggots on and dragging them in, but I'm going to fish a nice pre-tide SFL 011, size 16. It's a little bit heavier gauge than an XFS. It's a little bit heavier gauge than that. So it allows me, if I need to pull a little bit harder or make sure I know when that time where there's some of them bigger fish could feed, I've got a little bit bigger hook on. It's a little bit bigger than one of them hooks. 011, so a little bit stronger, and it just makes everything nice and easy. I can still get 2 maggots on nice and easy, as where with the other rig I can put a single maggot on if I need to. So they're my rigs. I've just been feeding that up. Hopefully when we drop him, I know we'll catch some, because I know what it's like when you're pleasure fishing. But they're the 2 rigs which I feel like won me that festival, just because picking the right one up in the right situation, as where you could easily just fish, 4x12, you could think, oh yeah, miss a few bites, get a few F1s, but it's about being efficient and trying to make the most when certain types of fish are feeding. This time of year, especially within match fishing, is you don't get a massive window to catch. You often hear on the bank, oh, I've only caught for the last 30 minutes. Now, if you were there with a lighter rig and your rig's falling through the water all the time and it's not catching up quick enough and you're not making the most of that feeding period. So they're the 2 rigs, nice and simple. 2 different style shotting patterns, 2 different style rigs. So one's got a bulk and 2 and a longer hook length. One's got a shorter hook length but a nice spread shotting pattern to work it in position. So I'm just going to touch on why I chose to fish, obviously, in them areas. I spoke about it before, but I feel like it's really important. That was a really nice big F1. It's really important you don't go too close or too far. Now, obviously, as the winter months and autumn months drag on, the further away you go, I'm thinking you're going to catch, you need to fish where the fish are going to least likely come off the bottom and cause you problems. So I feel as the winter goes on, the further you go out. So probably, I'm going to be fishing like 13-metre lines, stuff like that, but I probably won't come closer anywhere than a short 3, a number 4 and a number 5 of my pole. So 2 sections and a short 3, and then obviously a short kit as well. I won't come any closer than that, but as it comes into spring as well, you can come a lot closer. Again, it's just about all where the fish are. Venues are different up and down the country, and it's just about, if you've been on the venue recently, just look out little signs of how well the fish are feeding, how well the lake's fishing. Do you need to fish a little bit further? But give yourself the chance of catching that little run, because when the fish come on this line, and it's a really simple way of fishing, but it's so deadly. You can catch really quickly, you can catch a great stamp fish, you can tick over, you can rest that long line if you need to. That's where the biggest edge for me was in that festival. I feel I was a little bit more active fish swapping lines, as where people sometimes are still in that summer mode where they think they'll turn up. As where what I'd find is I'd come off my shallow line, catch 1 or 2 shallow, whether it was an eyed, a stocky, a little roach even, I'm not bothered what it was, drop short, catch a skimmer, an eyed, an odd F1, and then all of a sudden you'll find that last hour it'll just switch, you'll stop catching much silvers and you'll just start to hook a few more F1s and carp. So that's the rigs, dead simple. Obviously the bait's simple, we've gone through it. Helped me win 2 matches here at Weston in the past. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk about how I'll go about. We're going to do a little bit of fishing because it makes it interesting then, and then we'll finish the video off. Right, so we're just going to put 2 maggots on. I've got my heavier rig. Now the reason why I've picked this up is I just want to drop it in and see what's in my peg. Now I don't want to go too light too quick, so because I feel like if there is an odd small fish in the peg, I might start to hook them. So what I like to do with this is just flick my bait past and then just lower it down. So when I hold it in position, so like a float length out the water, feed over the top, and when I see my float straighten up, that's when I'm going to drop it. So obviously I've got that little fall of my bait falling through the water from a bulk. It's indication straight away. Now if I feel like I need a light rig and I need to move it, I can put that one on as well. But I just feel like to start off with, we've been feeding it, I just want to check what's on the bottom, see what's down there, see if we can catch any these skimmers, eyed F1s, these nice fish on the bottom. Now one thing I do think is going to happen is we've got a bait on the bottom, but if there's a few nuisance fish and still feeding, like I'm the only one sitting on the lake at the minute just because I come down just to do this video, so no one else is really feeding. So what you can find is maggots can be really attractive to, like, obviously there's a few small roach, there's not loads in here, you don't get marved to death, but obviously it might take a little bit of time just to build them fish up. Nah, that's perfect, that one. That was a nice bite, that one. But starting on that rig, that bottom rig, just allows you just to see what's going on in your peg. That's the reason why I started on it. Yes, the light rig can be really good, but the reason why I started on this little bit heavier rig is just because I want to get my bait to the bottom and I want to watch my float. Now what I mean by that is I want to sit there. This feels a really, really nice F1. I want to sit there and read my bristles. So if I get any signs or any lifts or movements or anything bombing round, then I can have a little look at my light rig to see if I can catch that way. But for me, there's nothing more simple than just plonking your rig in like so, making sure everything's nice and neat and throwing a bit of bait over. Oh, it's a massive F1. Now I know if I feel like I'll do it in a bit, if I start to catch these, look at that one. Oh, wish I had a load of them in that match. But look at that, this is a sort of like beauty you can catch. Like an old warrior, got a bit of a scar on him. But look at that, nice 2.5 pound F1 out of Belvedere. Like the big uns it's renowned for. He proper wanted that as well. I just got it out there. But you can see that fish, you can see how quickly you can get them in just by being nice and patient. So it's a nice sized fish. But I may not have caught him if I fished a little bit too light a rig, just because I feel like if he's feeding on the bottom and my rig's taking a long time to come down and there's an odd fish, obviously these venues are stocked to the brim. There's loads of different fish in here. Now, if he's on the bottom and there's a few eyed or a few skimmers lingering off bottom, then it's going to be hard to catch him. But just flick, like I said, flick that rig past so everything just goes past so it's not catching on anything. Hold my float up, chuck 10 in over the top, hold it nice and still, drop it down so you can just watch your float. If you get any sign indications on it, obviously that short piece of line between your pole tip and your float, you're going to see how effective that can be now. It's just if you get a little dink or a little sign, you can just lift up, you can be straight back in it straight away. So now I'm striking a bit like Zorro there, just because I'm not probably used to it, but the more you catch, obviously the nicer you'll be with your lifts. But you need to give it a little firm lift, just so you make sure you set that hook. And that's why it's really important with maggot fishing to have sharp hooks all the time. If you need to and you feel like your hook's going a little bit blunt because you're hooking maggots all the time and catching a few fish, then just change it up. That's why it's so important to have a nice sharp hook on, just because you can get these little lifts, these little indications, these little dinks, and if you've not got the sharpness of your hook, you might bump and lose a few fish, which can cause a problem. The last thing you want to do is sort of lose fish in your peg. Feel like it causes a massive issue. But you see that there now, I'm not like a conveyor belt, I'm not throwing loads and loads of bait in, I'm not trying to push my peg too far, I'm just literally being nice and patient, giving it time. I know I've got my hook bait in the right area, fishing on the right spot. The last thing I want to do is just create columns and columns and columns of bait going in. But for me, I always used to pick up the 4x12 and just think, right, that's what I'm fishing with. But it was so evident it was a much better rig at certain times, fishing with that 4x14s a day on the second day of the festival. So I thought, why not just come down to Weston, sit on the same peg again, go through, big lessons are learnt on it, and you can get on the bank and catch a few fish. Now, you say it's not fast, frantic fishing, but it's really interesting. So what I'm going to do is throw some over the top, and that's what I was about to say. Sometimes when you make that noise, I don't know what it is, it might be a perch or something. It feels a bit, I'm probably not going to guess right. Yeah, it's a little perch. It's a decent perch. But sometimes that noise of the bait going in can just trigger one to eat it. But this is the thing, that fish is probably what, 8 ounce, 7, 8 ounce? And you'd be very surprised that you keep plopping a few of them in the net, you're going to build your weight fast if you're obviously fishing in a match scenario. But one thing I always like to do is keep your elastic tight at the end, flick it past, obviously make sure there's everything in position, just hold your rig out, feed your bait. Now I'll probably try and catch one more decent fish on this, and then I'll just show you how I go about putting that light rig in, and you'll see the difference if you get a few more signs, a few more bites, a few more indications, which I think's mad. You think it wouldn't make a difference, just a slightly heavier float or a lighter float, and it makes you think about what sort of rig to fish with. There's no blueprint of that's what you've got to fish with all the time, but I find it fascinating when you fish and then all of a sudden a different rig can just catch you a few more fish, just because it's a little bit different way of presenting your rig. As where this is more like focused towards on fishing on the bottom, obviously that other rig's obviously about slowing your bait down and it falling through the water. So I'll just have one more on this one, then I'll just show you that other rig, and we'll probably get a few more signs and a few more indications off a few more smaller fish. Obviously when there's a few bigger fish there and them little blips go, like you do find that in sort of like if there's more people on the lake or a certain point in the match, they do just, obviously they fill up and you just disappear. But obviously when you're the only one on the lake, you're the only one feeding them, so they're going to come to you. Now, sorry to interrupt the video, but don't forget to like and subscribe. It just helps with the channel, and I'll let you get back to the rest of the video now. So what I'm thinking in a minute, I'm just going to feed now again. If I do hook anything now, if I don't get a sign or a little bite now, I'm just going to literally come back and just show you that love of light rig, because I've had a few signs and indications of odd fish in the pegs, and it might be a little bit too heavy, and I just want to see if I can catch on that lighter rig. A bubble coming up now in the peg, which is good. Yeah, I'm just going to have a little look. Have a little look on that lighter rig. So I've got my lighter rig, obviously lighter hook, 2 maggots on there. I'm going to show you how I go about flicking this rig in. Now there's a piece of lily bed which is in the way, but it's fine. I'll go underneath that. Now one thing I want to do is flick it past all the time, so I want to keep it nice and straight past, and you'll see my float arc over now. So my float's going to arc over, so when I'm going to feed my bait now, just as it arcs over, and you'll see any little short, sharp dinks indications on the way down. Obviously a lot of the time you can get a lot of your bites as that float just settles, so as that bait's just hitting the bottom, obviously the fish are seeing it coming down. Any fish that are lingering around there in that area, they see it hit the bottom, just pick it up, because obviously it's nice and attractive to them. But there's one thing is important, is always flick it past. Just gives you that chance of that fall. Gives you the, caught on a little leaf then. Gives you that presentation which you're looking for. Now one thing you can do, I've gone to the weirdest, is it doesn't have to be just all about flicking straight in front of you. You can flick it like 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and so yeah, I can get a bite like that on the drop. See, that literally pulled the elastic out, which has done me a favour. I think it's an F1 actually. Is it an hide? No, it's an hide. But this is the sort of thing you can do. You see that there? When I fish like, actually a hybrid. Look at that. But you won't mind catching that every chuck, or putting them, a few of them in your net in the winter and autumn months. But that's the thing. You see where, that's what I was talking about, that other rig. Yes, it's perfect for fishing on the bottom, but I've had that fish at probably like 3 foot, as where I don't really get that effect of that other rig, because obviously I'm trying to catch on the bottom. So what you can find is sometimes the more you loose feed, the more chance you've got of them fish obviously coming off the bottom, swimming around. They're naturally off the bottom anyway, so fish don't hug the bottom, so you're just trying to catch them where obviously they're lingering around. And if there's a few fish in your peg, just slowing that hook bait down can be massive. So just hold on nice and tight. Any little dink, any little indication, just give it a lift. You can drop it back down if you need to, but it's a good little sign now. Obviously it's been a while since kingfishers has bombed past. It's been a while, like a good while now we've actually fed this up. So what might have happened now is there's like a nice little bit of bait on the bottom. So obviously some better quality fish coming into the peg now. So this is what the sort of thing that'd happen after you've primed your lines. Now I'm not into like lifting and dropping my rig all the time, just because I feel like I don't want to spook anything. I just want to keep everything on the bottom. Now I'm just looking to feed over the top, just because it's a bit too far, that one. Just because sometimes you can get a nice little reaction off a little bit of noise going in your peg. Even though it's 5.5 foot deep, that little sound of some maggots hitting the water can just trigger a fish just to go down. See, there's someone on the end there. Someone's picked the bait up then. Yeah, it's a load of mashed maggots. So, as I was talking about before, a couple of mashed maggots, which is weird. I was talking about before, we're getting a lot more signs and indications as we were with that heavier rig. So this is what I mean. Sometimes we've seen that fish that we've had obviously pull the elastic out on the way down, which is a good thing. You slowed your bait down, different way of presenting your bait. But also, you're getting a few more sign indications. So having a few more bites on the drop now, which could be small fish, but you never know. That's a better bite, that one. So I'll probably end it on that one because I don't want to be here too long, but that's the beauty of it. Look at that little F1. Nice light rig, through the water. Seen we caught a big F1 on the other rig. We've caught a nice little F1 on this rig. Ooh. Top lip job, 2 maggots. Nice strung out shotting pattern as you can see there. So I'm going to unhook him, pop him back. But them 2 rigs are really important. Obviously I feel like giving him a massive edge, just swapping between the 2 in that festival. I'm not saying no one did that and they don't know, but I feel like I was a little bit more in tune with how the fish were responding with feeding and trying to work out which bit rig was best to pick up at which time, which I feel like is really important, because you've seen there today. So obviously when we've gone on the bottom, we sat there nice and patient, caught a big F1, and then as we've had a few indications, I've picked my other rig up just to show you. We've had a hybrid pull elastic out halfway down, and then a nice little F1 on the bottom. So I'm gonna have another little chuck, but thanks for watching guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.